Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're having a look at another Datamine set, basically because the dev server got updated 2 more times. We had a look at the extras yesterday of the most recent update of the dev server, but it has just been ridiculous, this dev server period, and it's been the longest and also the most updated over time. I'm pretty sure now we are pretty close to release. The dev server itself is going to close tomorrow morning, and my guess is the updates will either come out straight after it, or it'll come out next week. I just want to say a thanks to Ashida, and also of course Chabi for the work that they've put in when it comes to the data mines, and also keeping everyone updated on the information from these dev servers. It has been absolutely insane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to support Chabi, who creates a lot of the resources that a lot of us use to be able to see these things. Whether it's the websites that he runs, whether it's the tables that he runs when it comes to the munitions in the game, they're all services which are some that he provides for free for everybody, which is just nuts compared to the amount that people get out of them. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at the data mines and see what has gone on. The first one was from a few days ago, and it was 2.36.0.25, and what they did here is a few fixes to the F-47N and the P-47N, basically changing them so their flight models are slightly different. Shouldn't really change too much, it just means that both the vehicles will have a little bit less drag than usual, which still should be fine. For aircraft DMs, they actually changed a lot of MFDs, which are the multi-function displays that you see in the cockpit. A bunch of different aircraft got some changes on there, and then also scout drones, crashing them no longer creates craters, which is kind of interesting, so you won't be able to see where they got destroyed. The other change to the scout drones they did earlier was they actually added in the pretty cool the mini-map that you can see while using the scout drones, which I think is generally pretty nice. A lot of high-tier aviation vehicles got their countermeasures split. This means that you can pick how many of each countermeasure you want, which is quite cool, but it also depends on how big the pods are on each side of it. And also, at the same time, there was some drop tanks added to the JAB custom loadouts. The MiG-21 Bison got a bunch of new loadouts, which we had a look in the video. Basically, some new rockets and bombs, so it should make it easier to grind with. And of course, the Su-27SM, it went up to 126 countermeasures, but then went back down to 96. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with those. There was a metric ton of sensor changes, and this is something that I talked about previously, right? One of the things that a lot of people have been asking me over the period of time is how is the radar to RWR situation on planes at the moment, and then also how are active radar homing missiles kind of reacting to these things. And I've been chatting to people, and they've been saying they've watched a ton of videos on it, and people have been showcasing it and showing how they work and everything like this, and it's all great and wonderful. But as somebody who has been covering these dev servers for a long time, one of the largest changes they always do just before an update is they completely change RWRs, they completely change radars, and they also completely change the new mechanics that are coming in. And in both of these data mines, there are massive changes to RWRs, there are massive changes to radars, and also massive changes to pretty much all of the active radar homing missiles. So everything you've seen before of people testing them, in quotations, because testing stuff on the dev server is ludicrously bad, but it just won't be what you've seen, and it sucks. It really does that's how it's all set up. I just really wish that it was better, and it just sucks how it is. So the AN APG 63 got changed, the 63V got changed, the 65GY got changed, the 65Q got changed, and also they added a wide TWS for the 65Q. But yeah, a lot of them have just completely changed over time. It's just nuts. And also a bunch of other ones have also changed as we go forward. They added ammo storage data to the cool bar, which is of course the new little destroyer frigate coming in for American Coastal. They also added the ammo elevator, which is quite nice. and then the Queen Mary came back with the hood, so they actually added it back. One of the more interesting things is also a general change on the internal fuel tanks. So basically, they are now 400 HP instead of 250, but they've completely changed how they take damage. So, for example, if you hit it with at least 300 KE damage, there used to be a 70% chance of fire and a 10% chance of explosion. Now, after the change, it is a 50% chance of fire and a 50% chance of explosion. So there is a much higher chance now of explosion and less chance of a fire. This is consistent across all of the different changes. So basically, when you hit it with a CE, previously it topped out at 250 damage, 30% fire, 20% explosion. Now at least 400 CE damage has 50% chance of fire and 50% chance of explosion. So they basically added higher parameters, meaning if you hit it with larger rounds or more damage, you will do more damage and it is more likely to explode. So now if you hit it with the lower amounts of damage, it will still be the same. It will actually be harder to get through because the fuel tanks have higher HP. But if you hit it with like a proper round, like the APF SDS at high tier, and you do more kinetic damage, it is more likely to explode. So the survivability of vehicles which basically use a lot of internal fuel tanks, which is quite a lot of them, especially stuff like light vehicles and also, of course, Russian MBTs, should decrease, especially through the front. Also, at the same time, there were some suspension changes for the Leopard 2A4M Canada. Also, there's supposed to be Canadian crew voice lines, but I think all they did was modify the American ones and just gave them like a little bit of a tweak. And I understand, like, from the rest of the world's perspective, that Canadians are just Americans, with, you know, the top hat of America and all of that. But they do sound different, and I would love if they ever decided to add like a bunch of Newfoundlander crewmen or something. Like go find somebody from like Nova Scotia or something and just get them to record a bunch of lines, and you would just have a hilarious set of audio. It would be fantastic. Also on the 2A7V, they added that 20mm hull collar we talked about, which is quite good. And then all the Tigers just got crazy amounts of armor changes. And the biggest one is that they get way more turret roof armor. So 40mm instead of 25 on the Tiger Elite. So it's going to be a lot harder to top pen it, which is going to be huge. The BMDs and the BMP3s and the ZBD-04s, they changed their fuel tanks, so they are a little bit more tanky when it comes to their armor modifier, but it shouldn't really matter too much. They'll just be able to go through. They fixed the drowning on the Object 279, but it's been reverted, so I'm guessing it will be able to drown again. And the Falcon and the ADATs got themselves some transmission changes, which won't make a huge difference to them. It should be completely fine. The TOG 2 gets a funny change. The 76mm ammo is now actually consumed. So if you were firing the 76mm ammo, it wouldn't be consumed before. So I don't know if that meant you would get unlimited ammo, or if what would end up happening is you would end up it wouldn't like get consumed on the X-ray, so therefore you would just have an ammo rack which shouldn't be there. The EVGA got changed as well. They haven't added in the real round for the EVGA yet, or maybe they have added that round in, but it doesn't seem like a round. It seems like it's just something which is just wrong. But you have the Vextra TML 105. Basically, the first axle steering deflection is now 30 degrees instead of 20, and the second axle is 20 instead of 10. So that means it should turn better, basically. It'll be able to turn more. So that will be quite nice. They also added the 500mm of armor on the CV90-35DK, but they fixed that in the next update, so it's all good. And also for the Namer as well, they added the new damage model, and also the ammo storage was split into 4-2. I don't think the name is finished. I really don't. It just doesn't feel like it's ready to go. And even after they added the armor to the front of it, it's still way too heavy for what it is. and also at the same time there's just a few other things that aren't there yet, and it just kind of sucks because I'd really like to see that vehicle in its entirety. I would really like to see it on the battlefield, hammering stuff and working out how it's actually going to really fit in the game, especially since it's at a bit of an awkward BR compared to, you know, the other vehicles that are in the game. But right now, you can't tell anything, which kind of sucks for it. It really does. They also did some general weapon changes, so I saw some people talking about this. We'll have to see how it actually affects stuff. For ATGMs, the explosive damage radius is now 0.3 instead of 0.25, so a slight buff to ATGMs. For Heat and Heat FS, the explosive damage radius is now 0.3 instead of 0.15, so that's doubled in its damage radius, which seems quite aggressive. And then, of course, the Hesh, the explosive damage offset, is 0.1 instead of 0.2. So, of course, now we have the classic dev server thing that everybody talks about. Hesh has been buffed once again, guys. We need to use it. It's a great round. It never is. Don't trust Hesh. Throw Hesh in the bin. Unless you have to use Hesh, do not use Hesh. People will be trolling you, and they'll just say, hey, guess what? Hey, Hesh is better now. Hesh is great. Hesh has never been good. Hesh may have been good for like a week back like 6-7 years. Hesh is dead, right? Leave Hesh alone. Don't touch it. You don't need to. There's no need to worry your brain about Hesh. Just use the proper rounds and don't get trolled. Then we have some tech tree changes, which is the number of vehicles needed for the UK Blue Water Tier 5 to unlock is now 6 instead of 5. That's because of the Queen Mary being added back in. And also, we got some economy changes for the F-16 AM because they added the Morse system to it, and then also for the MiG-21 Bison 2, since it got itself a bunch of modifications as well. There was also the new loading screen for the Desert Warrior, which we showed in a previous video, and a bunch of new texts and stuff like that. One of the funniest ones is, warning, the previous game session ended abnormally, most likely due to the installed sound modification. The sound modification is disabled. Please contact the author of the modification for an updated version, or if you are the author, make changes to the modification based on the current sound project located at da-da-da-da-da. So that'll be interesting to see what that is. I'm guessing they're actually trying to enforce the fact that they banned sound mods in competitive play a little bit ago, mainly because there was a team that won a tournament and then they bragged about it and were talking about how they won it because of the sound mod, because some people's egos are completely out of check. They added some new modification tasks, which of course is the MORE and the missile approach warning system, allowing false heat targets to shoot off. So that's basically something where if you get a missile fired at you, an IR missile specifically, I believe, the vehicle will automatically fire off countermeasures. Now, this has actually been in the game for a long time. Well, not a long time, but a decent time with the F-111, the Aardvark. But the problem with the Aardvark is if you get one IR missile fired at you, it fires off so many damn flares to stop it. You basically have like no flares to live with. So if you had like something like a Gripen, I feel like a MORE would be fine because you have so many countermeasures. But for so many other machines, it's just not going to work because, yeah, it's a little bit crazy. For the there's also a new weapon text, which is the M599, and I'm pretty sure this is the AMX missile, but it might be something else, I suppose. We'll have to see what goes on with it. And then also they added all of the camouflages for all the different planes. But you can see which planes got access to camouflages, but you can't see the camouflages in the game, which is a little bit odd. So that's something which is super weird at the end of the day. So yeah, a lot of the new high-tier planes are getting camouflages, and then a lot of the Benelux stuff is also getting camouflages as well. Those are the two things which are kind of being focused on. And then also there are some text changes. For crew training, it's necessary to set the technique in the slot, and now it's for crew training you need to put the vehicle in the slot, which obviously makes sense. They also confirmed the skipper missile's name as they've done previously. Then the other datamine, which is probably going to be the final datamine of the dev server. Not entirely sure about that, but it just seems like it's one of those wrap-up ones. It was 2.36.0.26. This one was from yesterday, and it added, of course, the AV8B Plus for the US, which we've talked about. Really nice to see, and as I said, a lot of people have been looking forward to it. There was also APF-SDS ricochet probabilities reworked, but we'll have to see how that actually goes, because I don't know about you, but as somebody who's been playing a lot around 9.0 and 10.0 recently, spinning a lot of light vehicles, and also just playing a lot of standard ones, there has been a lot of problems with ricochet of APF-SDS, just it not working, or basically the biggest problem I have is when I shoot down into a vehicle from an angle and it ricochets upwards. It very much annoys me when stuff like that happens, because it ricochets upwards at such a ridiculous angle. It should never ricochet. If you want to shatter, do whatever you want, but it just kind of annoys me. Then there was also new gunner voice lines added, which are to do with the new modules that are inside of the vehicle. So, for example, electronics destroyed, power system destroyed, power system repaired, stuff like that. So it's all about the stuff that they're working on internally, which shows to you that they were working on this stuff, or were going to implement this stuff a long time ago, because I'm sure they recorded all of these voice lines at the same time as the other ones that they did, which was about a year or two ago. So just remember, when it comes to these pipeline things, they aren't all necessarily exactly there, or stuff is already being worked on even before the idea of the community voting on them. So just remember that, remember this, because there's no way you would be able to turn around a lot of these systems as quick as they have. Then also, they changed the Mirage 2000. Basically, they added more drag, or less steep decrease in induced drag coefficient, but also the other part of it means that it will end up having much more drag while turning at low speeds, but much less drag at higher speeds. So below 750 kilometers an hour, it'll have more drag, and above it will have less. So that's kind of nice. They added the thermal pod for the F4F, the ice. They're really trying to add as much stuff to that thing to get people to play it, and that's fair. You know, people will play it because it's in Germany, and a lot of people play Germany, but it's definitely in a lot better position than it started these dev servers on. Still isn't the best vehicle, but c'est la vie. Maybe one day it'll get up there. There was a bunch of MFD changes again for some vehicles, for helicopters and also high-tier aviation. Not entirely sure what those changes are, but the MFD stuff is super cool. I wish more people used it, but, you know, maybe in the future we'll have that. A bunch more high-tier jets got their countermeasures split, and this is pretty much affecting all vehicles above like 11.0 now. So it should be a lot better for many. The J8F got 4 more countermeasures. The J11A got 126. The Mirage 2000 DR1 got a Moors, and the SU-27SM got 96 countermeasures for its 126, which we talked about previously. They then changed a ton more radars, including the N001 RLPK-27, the Zook, and also the Rubin. They added new setups. The NAPG-63 also changed. If you want to see any of the radar changes, I highly recommend having a look at them, because obviously many of them are very small changes. Some of them are quite large, but unless you are interested in specific vehicles, it's obviously worth having a look at. They added 3D tracks to a bunch of vehicles, this dev server, by the way. I didn't really talk about them because of the fact that there was just so many, and also it's a mechanic that they've been adding over the last few years, trying to make stuff a little bit more realistic and a little bit better. But in this specific dev server, they gave it to all the M26 variants, so that's something to look at. They also changed the Gepard 1A2, which is the one with the stingers. Basically, it has a little bit less chance of exploding compared to before, and a little bit less chance of fire. So just shoot it in the turret, kill the 2 crew. It's much easier to do. There was a complete rework of the Tiger 1's armor on all of the vehicles which have any semblance of the Tiger. So even the VK4501P, which is the Tiger 1 turret on the Porsche chassis, I believe. But yeah, it all got changed. Not in huge ways, basically just rounding off numbers. So for example, the whole rear, instead of 82 millimeters, is now 80. the hull roof is, instead of 26, is 25, stuff like that, right? So nothing too crazy to write home about, but it's something to at least have a look at. The 2S38, the target tracker and the laser beam riding sensor no longer work if the electronic system equipment is damaged. It's going to be real interesting to see what happens with that 2S38, because technically it got buffed, and we talked about this previously. With its ammo the way it is now, you can fire off all of it and not have to worry about the first stage. Then also, secondly, all of these additional extra things they put in the X-ray to be damaged in order to reduce the systems, all of these I don't think will actually matter that much. Because the only thing about the 2S38 you're going to really worry about is obviously being hulled down and, you know, surviving through there. And the other part is how durable is that fuel tank in the front of it, so when you try and hit the crew, you know, it kind of eats it. So we'll have to see what goes on. The T80UE1, they also added some additional stuff in its X-ray, so the additional new modules that it talked about, which would be nice to see. And then also for the AML-90s, they got 2,000 roof MG ammo instead of 800, so that's something to look at. They also updated the damage model of the CV9035 and also the Namer, which we had a look at on the dev server, and reduced the warm-up time for a lot of IR missiles, and then decided to completely change a bunch of active radar homing missiles, such as the PL-12, the R-77, the R-771, which I don't think is on anything yet, and then also a few others too. They changed the Strela 2M for naval weapons. It seems to work a bit better now, but the main thing is they made its reload time 1 second instead of 30. So it's going to be super easy to keep firing off those missiles. I still think it's going to be best used in a way. So what you do is you sit it near battleships and just use it as an AA machine instead of having to use like a cruiser. You just use the Strela and it's a lot easier to do. It seems like the way to go, in my opinion. They increased the BR of the F-16A-15, which is the Belgium F-16. It has AIM-9Ms instead of Ls, so it makes sense. I mean, it's as simple as that. They also changed the engine on the F-104G for France. It's actually the J79G11, so it has a higher engine mass, but they didn't change anything else on it. And also the Desert Warrior is now, it has the flag of Kuwait on it, which is kind of cool, since the Desert Warrior was never actually used by Britain, and it was exported to Kuwait. The reason why the Desert Warrior exists is because of Kuwait. So yeah, we have a new nation represented in the game. I don't think they have voice lines yet, though. I don't know if they will in the future, but it would be cool if they did. I'm always down for more voice lines and stuff like that. I think it's really cool to see that. The Mirage 2000 DR1, they added the more to it, which is kind of cool. And then also, they have added something which we will talk about more in a future video. So they've added a new 3D decoration, which is the Auctioneer's Gavel, and also a new avatar, which is the Auctioneer. This worries me a lot, because we've talked about previously, with the gambling stuff and with all of this stuff, if you keep normalizing it and people get on board with it and go, oh, well, this is great, this is awesome, they're going to keep expanding it. And unfortunately, some other games have done some really weird stuff with this. So yeah, I'll make a video about it, but I'm worried. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm worried about this quite a lot. There's also a new loading screen, which is really nice though for the Fokker G1A. It looks really nice. It's probably the worst out of the three because it looks kind of cartoony compared to them, but it's pretty beautiful. So looking forward to seeing that as well. They obviously added the flag of Q8 and also some new control texts, which were the automatic bombs release in CCRP mode. So this one is interesting to see. We tested this on the dev server just to see if it actually did anything, and at the moment it doesn't seem to do anything. It just follows the same way that that CCRP has worked for the longest time. So if you didn't know with CCRP, that's where you target a point on the ground, and then the plane or the system will tell you how to line up where to drop the bombs, and then once you hit the lineup, then it will drop the bombs, especially if you hold down bomb series. So this is how it's worked for like 2 years or even more. Like I showed it in my controls video, and now they've added in a new control for automatic bomb release in CCRP mode, but it doesn't seem to do anything right now because it doesn't automatically drop the bombs, it doesn't change how bombs are dropped, so we're going to have to see more clarification on how that actually works, because right now there is a bit of false information going around about how CCRP works, because it's the most misunderstood mechanic in the game and has been forever, not just by like, you know, general players, but also by, you know, people who make content. So basically right now the way that CCRP works on the dev server is exactly the way it works on the live. So don't be taken aback, or don't be taken for a fool. There was also a bunch of new menu text, but it's all to do with the new kind of UI that they're adding in for the crews, so nothing too crazy there. And also, they added some new vehicle text, of course, and also the new X-ray text, which is the DL channel, so we'll have to see what that actually means. Then they also changed some of the background text, so basically just the name of the backgrounds and some vehicle texts, and also the X-ray text changes from HMD to HMS, which is kind of interesting to see the difference of. So yeah, that is all of the Datamine stuff. Ton of information, I think it's fair to say. And as I said, looking at this one and also seeing the dev server closing tomorrow, I believe it is, I think we're pretty close to the update now. Usually you get like these little tweaks to try and get everything ready. When I look at stuff like the CV9035DK, when I look at the XM800T, when I look at the Namer, they look a hell of a lot more close to what they should be than they were before. So expect the update either in a few days or in a week, and we'll be ready to go. But until then, guess what? Let's get the Churchill grinded out, let's have a bit of fun, and let's lay down and enjoy the sun. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.